If you're sitting on a bunch of Velocity points, but you're unsure on which redemptions offer you the best value, then today's video is going to be made just for you. In today's video, I dive into some of the highest value redemptions on the whole Velocity website so that you can ensure that you are using your points effectively and for the best value possible. So with that in mind, before we get into the top value redemptions, let's take a look at what a bad value redemption would look like. Typically, an example of a poor value redemption will be flying economy on a Virgin flight using points. Another example will be doing short haul international flights on Virgin as well. Now that's not going to be every short haul flight international, it's just the ones that are typically on sale. So an example of this is a Brisbane to Bali flight on Virgin, as Virgin regularly run sales fares when buying that fare with cash. Usually a poor value redemption will be redeeming your points at around 2 cents of value for each point that you spend. So now that we have an idea on what a poor value redemption is, let's go ahead and look at what some of the best value redemptions are on the Velocity website. Now I'm aiming to stick to a redemption around that 100,000 point mark. Some will be just a little bit over and some will be just a little bit under. Taking a look at the first example here, you will notice that there is a trend, which is that most of these flights are going to be on business class. You will typically get the most redemption value out of your points when you're traveling on business class, especially when you're flying international. So the first example is business class on United. It's going to cost you 102,000 Velocity points, which will unlock 9 cents worth of value for every point that you redeem. 9 cents worth of value is great, and that's what we ideally want to be aiming for. That first example that we talked about where we're earning about 2 cents of value per point, that is almost 5 times greater. Now the good news with this first redemption is that I just have Sydney to Los Angeles here, but on the Velocity website you can get Brisbane to Los Angeles, Melbourne to Los Angeles, Sydney to Los Angeles, all on United using Velocity points. You can also get to San Francisco as well. So Brisbane, Sydney, and I think Melbourne have San Francisco flights on United as well, which is amazing. There really is a lot of flight availability getting to America with Virgin. In fact, I would say it is so much easier getting to and from America with Virgin points compared to Qantas points. I went there at Christmas time with my family and we would not have been able to go on that trip unless I had Velocity points. The other good thing about this redemption is that often there will be up to 9 business class seats that you can book with points on that one flight. To put this into comparison with Qantas, usually they're only giving you about 2 reward seats available on each flight that you can use with points, meaning if you're traveling with a family, it can get very, very difficult. So if you are traveling with a family, I would highly recommend using Virgin points if you are considering going to America in business class, because that's going to give you your best chance at the whole family getting up at the front of the plane. Moving on, the next redemption will be Perth to Doha, which will cost you 89,500 Velocity points. This redemption will be on business class on Qatar Airways, and that's going to unlock about 6 cents of value for each point that you redeem. Again, Qatar also fly from Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne through to Doha. The only reason I don't have that as a redemption here is because I think it's about 119,000 Velocity points, and I really wanted to target using points around that 100,000 mark. Good news is there is a lot of availability getting from Australia to Doha on Qatar using your Velocity points. Now, many of you may be thinking that you don't really have a desire to go holiday in Doha. The reason that you would likely go to Doha will be if you're flying onwards into Europe. If you can get a 14-hour flight to Doha from Australia, then it's much easier to get an economy flight from Doha into Europe, or you can actually use points and get business class from Doha into Europe, because there's plenty of availability this way as well. So for me personally, while there's only 6 cents of value for each point that you use, which is lower than the first example, because getting to Doha is such a crucial factor when you are flying onto Europe, I really, really like this redemption. Moving on, the third redemption that offers great value using your Velocity points will be Sydney or Melbourne through to Singapore. Singapore, like Doha, is one of those hubs that you can use to fly onwards into Europe. Before you fly onwards into Europe, getting to Singapore will cost you 74,000 Velocity points if you want to do that flight in business class. That flight is actually on Singapore Airlines, so you can use your Velocity points in order to get on this Singapore Airlines flight. When you redeem your points on this flight, you're going to unlock 4 cents of value per point. Again, it's much lower than that first redemption, but if you are flying into Europe, going via Doha or Singapore are 2 of the crucial stopovers that you will probably take getting to Europe. Now, the redemption value is lower than that first example that we talked about, but it is still double the amount of value that you're going to get if you were to use that on an economy flight domestically or short haul international flights on those routes that are heavily discounted from time to time. Now, the reason that I really like this redemption is because it ties into the next redemption, which is actually not departing from Australia, but it is Singapore to London. You can get from Singapore to London for 104,000 Velocity points in business class on Singapore Airlines. Now, I really like this redemption because it's going to get you 14 hours in business class, and you can link that redemption up with that third redemption that we just talked about. And now you know that you can get from Singapore to London as well, and altogether that's going to cost you 180,000 Velocity points. When you redeem your points on this Singapore to London flight, you'll be redeeming them at 6 cents of value for each point that you redeem. 6 cents of value for each point that you redeem is getting a lot closer to where we ideally want to be redeeming them, in between that 6 to 9 cents worth of value. Finally, let's get to our last redemption, and it is actually one of the highest redemptions as well. I did touch on it briefly earlier, but that's going to be Brisbane to San Francisco in business class on United. This flight is going to cost you 102,000 Velocity points, and when you use your points on this flight, you'll unlock value of 9 cents of value for each point that you use. In some instances, it can actually make sense just buying those points on the Velocity website and then using those points to buy this business class seat. So typically a business class seat from Brisbane to San Francisco will cost you $10,000 when you pay with cash. If you buy those points, I think you can buy them, I don't know off the top of my head, but somewhere between $2,500 to $4,000. In order to buy those points, you can jump on the Velocity website, buy them, they will sit in your account, and then you can use them towards this flight. Even if you actually buy the points, you're still going to get this flight at a massive discount. Similar to Los Angeles, you can go via San Francisco, also from Sydney. The good thing about this redemption as well, same as the first example, United have plenty of reward seats available on each flight, sometimes up to 9 reward seats on each flight. Now, a couple of things if you do need help finding these redemptions, search last minute, particularly for the first and the 5th redemption that we touched on going to America. Velocity often release reward seats within the next month when we're traveling to the USA, just because they know that if they're not going to sell these seats, they'd much rather get some sort of income in and offer them as reward seats. With the other redemptions, you can look a little further out. Often a few months in advance will reveal some of those seats. Like we touched on at the start, long haul international business class flights are the flights that are going to give you the best value. Try to avoid short haul international or domestic economy flights and aim to redeem your points between 6 to 9 cents worth of value. Finally, if you're having trouble searching the Velocity website, use a third-party tool called seats.aero. Seats.aero is an amazing tool that scrapes all of the data from the Velocity website and gives it to you in a nice, very searchable format. If you would like me to make a seats.aero walkthrough, let me know in the comments and I'll consider making that in the future. If you do need further help, check the link in the description and I will see you in the next video.